Okay. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to welcome you all to this cabinet meeting to discuss a very important issue that, in regards to Mussolini and the dire, the frankly quite troubling declarations that he has made. We need to decide as a cabinet what the British government will do. First of all, I need to make two statements. First of which, Chancellor, why are you not wearing a tie?
Well, Prime Minister, I'd like to inform you that the British economy is in a dire situation, and in order to help this just by a little bit, I've decided not to purchase a tie for this occasion.
Very interesting. I would also like to say that the Secretary of State for War has a gift to give us.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Gentlemen, this is the ballpoint pen. It has been created under military research and has been proven to not leak. It has also been proven to improve the speed at which you can write reports in battlefield. We are planning on releasing it to the public in 3 years from now, 1938.
And what are these called?
They have the code name BIC for them.
Should call them BIC. Now, as it is customary, we must be briefed on the current global situation. Foreign Secretary, please, what is it like in the world?
Good morning, gentlemen. I would first of all like to remind you that our great empire is now larger than it ever was during the 19th century.
Yeah.
I would like to also bring up the issues we are having in the Middle East, especially with Palestine, which is proving very difficult to contain and quite costly, frankly. We also have the issue in Ulster, in Ireland, just across the seas, with the tariff war constantly going on at the moment. India, as now we are struggling with nationalist risings in India, and we cannot depend on them for support during a conflict such as this. And as we know, France suffered greatly from the Great War, and has rising unemployment and great political instability, and is already on its third government in 7 months. I would like to raise the importance and praise us for the Stresa conference just earlier this year, where we got our collaboration with Italy and France, which is of the utmost importance in keeping peace in our world today. And we also have the Anglo-German naval treatment also earlier this year, which allowed us to help us contain Hitler, who is becoming an ever more pressing matter. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary. Now that we have been briefed on the global situation, we must now focus on the smaller problem that we must deal with as a government. Mussolini has declared that he has interests in Abyssinia. Now, this is a place that we cannot afford to lose in regards to our spheres of influence and our dominance over the region. So, Secretary of State for War, what is the situation in Abyssinia?
Thank you, Prime Minister. The situation in Abyssinia is that Italy wishes to conquer Abyssinia by attacking from its two colonies on the north and on the south of Ethiopia. It has all started with a whack crisis, and now it has gone so big that Italy is actually going to be able to conquer the entirety of Ethiopia. And I would like to remember everyone that we have really strong ties with Ethiopia, as we have a British Somaliland right north to it. So this is an ally that we cannot afford to lose. Therefore, I definitely wish that we would take some military action.
Thank you, Secretary of State. Now, the question we must all ask ourselves, given the current economic situation around the world, this is a question for you, Chancellor. What can Britain financially afford to do, if anything?
It's rather simple, Prime Minister. Really, we cannot do anything. We must focus on our national economy. We must focus on building our exports and re-employing the nation.
Thank you. And talking about our internal situation and given that we need to re-employ the nation. Home Secretary, what is the situation of the people?
Well, like the Chancellor previously said, not only can we not afford to do anything, but we also should not even consider doing anything. As the fear from the Great War is still present in the British people's mind. It has been called by H.G. Wells the war to end all wars, as no single government should ever consider doing something that could provoke such a catastrophe. We should not, according to the British people, we should not do anything in this conflict.
Thank you, Secretary. So, let us look at our options. We have not doing anything, as would be financially and politically viable. Thank you, Home Secretary. Yet we must also explore the option of doing something. We must explore both options in order to make a proper decision.
Prime Minister, may I just reiterate the importance of our ally in Mussolini, who has already demonstrated his alliance and contribution to establishing peace in our world today. Just last year, he sent 40,000 men to the Austrian border, where Germans were planning to invade Austria in the disgraced Anschluss. So this is just reiterating the fact of Mussolini's importance to us as an ally.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary. This will be taken into consideration, but we need to explore all options of the British government before we can make a decision. We must not make a decision that is not properly informed or discussed. So I would like to ask the Secretary of State for War, what if the British government decided to take action, what would we do?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just going back to the point that the Foreign Minister just brought up, I would just like to say that Mussolini's military intervention to prevent Anschluss is the exact reason why we should do the same thing here in Ethiopia to prevent Mussolini's takeover, Mussolini's Anschluss of Ethiopia.
Do you really...
Secretary of War, Hitler, Mussolini was able to do that as he's the single man in power. We are a democracy. We have more than 21 million voters to please. Not only that, but now women are voting as well, which are more sensitive than men, as widely known by the public. We cannot afford, on a job point of view, to go to war, as this will be highly unpopular with everyone.
Home Secretary, do you have the figures of current unemployment in the nation?
I do not.
But you would agree with
possession of the Chancellor.
You would agree with the statement that Britain's unemployed population is very large.
I would.
Would you also agree with the statement that by increasing rearmament would cause for a need of increased labour, which would employ the population?
Prime Minister, are you suggesting another Great War?
I'm not suggesting a Great War. I'm suggesting that by rearming Britain, we would have a need for labour.
Prime Minister,
and
I must...
let me finish, please, gentlemen. By rearming would call for more labour, which would mean more jobs for the unemployed population. Look at Germany. Germany has had the largest unemployed population in the world, and due to rearmament, I am not saying that Hitler's foreign policy has anything to do with this, but I am saying that Hitler has gone from extreme unemployment to minimal unemployment.
Prime Minister,
I do realize that, but however, I need to remind everyone present that although thousands of jobs might be created, I know 5 that will certainly go out of job in the next year if we start to rearm. We lost a majority of more than 14,000 votes by 5,000 votes by an opponent who supported disarmament.
Okay, so
I must stress this information. If we rearm, not all of the unemployed workers can work in these factories. They're not skilled enough labourers.
Yes.
Prime Minister, are you seriously
I'm speaking, Foreign Secretary. Chancellor, does your department have plans put in place to employ these people? Because so far I have not seen any. So if you could give this cabinet a viable option to employ the population, then that option will take primary.
No, I must add the fact that the unemployment is going down, but it still is not where it should be. Just 4 years ago, it was at nearly 3 million, and now it is just at 1.4. So we must keep our national focus in mind and wait until we have a better economy.
And might I ask you something? As the Secretary of State for War has said that Ethiopia is Mussolini's Anschluss, and we tried to stop Hitler from starting this invasion of Austria, as it would put a halt to his expansionist goals. What if by not halting Mussolini's expansionist goals could Mussolini suddenly decide that he needs to expand more to our colonies in the empire in East Africa?
Mussolini has already shown his dedication to peace. Previously, last year, in his, as I've mentioned before, he sent men to stop from German invasion. He has shown his dedication to peace in our world.
Is invading Abyssinia showing dedication to peace by starting a war?
Foreign Secretary, that was the exact point I wanted to elaborate on. As you know, I am the Secretary of State for War, and I am also the secretary. I am also the head of our Department of Information, and I know from a very reliable source that what is going on here in Wow, in the oasis, that is the whole conflict is about, has been staged by Mussolini's troops. How can you call that a border conflict if it's in the middle of a country, sir?
I would like to reinforce this point. We must look at Manchuria as well. Manchuria, we did nothing. The League of Nations did nothing. It took them a year to make a report and then another year to bring the entire issue to a vote. The League did nothing. And look at Japan now. It is expanding like wildfire. If you give a man an inch, he will take a mile. And Japan is a clear example of what will happen if we allow Italy to expand. Mussolini has clearly stated that his foreign policy is to rebuild the Roman Empire, and he will not stop at Abyssinia. I can tell you that for a fact.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm glad you brought up this point of the League of Nations, as the British public has a lot of faith in the League of Nations. Yes, the League of Nations was not able to provide in the Manchurian crisis, but it can do it this time. In 1931, just 4 years ago, the British supporters clubs of the League of Nations could boast more than 400,000 members. It is a very impactful belief, and we need to push that instead of going to war for what is essentially just a water hole in the middle of the desert.
Okay, so you are suggesting that the League of Nations must intervene. So, however, the League of Nations has no standing military power to, in a sense, be a peacekeeping force. However, and the British Army is not large enough to support or commit to such a force. Now, if we were to let me just explore.
You were suggesting to go into the conflict, and you're saying we don't have enough support. You know, enough
we do not have enough forces to commit.
We have enough forces to deal with that problem. We have enough just to deal with that problem. Also, the South Africa has declared that it will go together with us if we take any military actions. They have 75,000 troops at their command right now, and they can organize more by increasing conscription and increasing the training rates. That means their army will be almost the third of our army once we get there. So that means that with our help of our allies, not by ourselves, but with the help of our allies, we are able to prevent what is essentially a Manchuria in Africa.
Then we must look at the Dominions.
Gentlemen.
Do you what is the status? Can we count on the Dominions for their support over this?
So, as most of you may know, the Dominions have all been granted complete independence in 1931 with the Statute of Westminster due to their great effort in the Great War. However, they have stressed that they prefer us not to go into European conflict. However, they will provide support if there is a European conflict. However, this is not such a conflict. This is a minor issue with, just as we mentioned before, a little watering hole in the middle of Africa, which no one, quite frankly, cares about. What language, sorry.
Foreign Minister, this watering hole you're talking about, I would like to go back to Manchuria. What was Manchuria essentially was a little bit of iron getting blown up. Nobody has died, nobody has lost anything more than 2 days of work. And then in this watering hole, lives have been lost already. There is a fight going on right now between Italian troops, which are essentially called mercenaries because Italians do not agree that they're their troops, and the Ethiopian Somalians.
Secretary of State of War. We
And
must
is Italy
we must
a
not-
European nation?
we must not risk causing an enemy of Mussolini. He is a major ally in keeping communism and Hitler at bay. And if we create a third enemy, we're demanding for destruction.
Can I
Minister,
interject?
Foreign Secretary.
Sorry, Secretary of State War. Can I just interject for a second? You say that you stress the importance of Mussolini in this. Yet we have signed the Washington and London naval conferences that limits Italy's navy to every 5 British boats. The Italians are only allowed to have 1.75. Now, wouldn't that be limiting Italy's capability to assist us in the fight against communism? And we would also like to state that we have signed the Anglo-German naval agreement, which allows Germany to rebuild its navy. So we are essentially allowing Germany to expand. Yes, we are doing it in a controlled method.
We are.
But wouldn't Germany be a useful ally in the conflict against the greatest enemy of all?
Are you
the
suggesting we
communists?
collaborate? Are you suggesting we collaborate with Hitler?
I'm suggesting that we allow Hitler to grow to be a buffer state. And Hitler stated he does not want to take away our empire. We must remember that we are the greatest nation in the world. We have the biggest army in the world. Now, we want to protect that empire. And if we can allow Hitler to be the focus of Stalin and let the communists and the Germans fight it out. And Hitler stated he does not want to take away our empire, whereas Italy is directly threatening our sphere of influence in Africa.
And
We
also
must think about
mentioned
the
sphere
empire.
of a living space that they would require.
Abraham Strong.
Exactly.
And as Hitler stated that the living space he requires is not to the west and south, but to the east of Russia and her dominion states. So we must be looking to allow, if Germany wants to expand, they have stated they want to expand to the east. So we must also look at how can we allow Hitler to potentially deal with the communists, because we must remember that we do not want a communist revolution here. We want to keep
Gentlemen,
Prime Minister,
may I please bring the conference
Our
back to the
nation to
Abyssinian
one
conflict?
piece.
We are here
Please,
to we're here to focus on
discuss.
Abyssinia, not on Hitler.
Sorry, I got a little carried away, but you brought up Hitler. I was just responding to your comment, Foreign Secretary. So, it seems we must, back to your question, the dominions. As the Secretary of State for War has stated, South Africa will support us. I have a telegram from the Canadian Prime Minister saying, whilst they are not inclined to, there would be a great number of Canadians anxious to swim the Atlantic. So we can potentially say that the Canadians are more than likely to support us in this. As Australia and New
Mr. Prime
Zealand
Minister,
being
do
our
you
most
expect the
loyal
Canadians
dominion.
to come to East Africa to help with a crisis over again what is essentially a watering hole
I'm
in
sure-
the middle of the
But you could
desert?
say that Austria is just a bunch of mountains.
I'm
It is.
sure.
So
the Home
why
Secretary-
did we put so much stake into? Sorry, Chancellor, but I just need to enlighten the Home Secretary. Why would we care so much about a group of mountains or a watering hole?
Austria is in Europe.
And,
And it's closer to home.
Ethiopia.
This in the middle of nowhere actual Britain. Yes, there's a colony.
And
But
also,
it is not
if we look at
frankly,
economics,
the
South
importance of
Africa-
Mussolini
Secretary.
is bigger than this minor incident, and the importance of Mussolini as an ally should outweigh this.
I think we
Foreign
should
Secretary, this minor
Secretary of State
incident
for
you
War,
are
please.
talking about
constrain
will
yourself.
Secretary
give
of State
Mussolini.
for War. Secretary of State for War. Please, we must remain proper and have
Prime
proper
Minister,
courtesy.
may I
Foreign
ask- may I
Secretary.
ask the question
no,
to
you. No,
the-
it is. You have had your chance. It is now the Chancellor's turn.
I'm
Please, we are
sure-
British, not Indians.
I'm sure the
French.
Home Secretary would agree with me. I'm sure the Home Secretary would agree with me on the statement that although the South Africans may support us, the British won't.
I agree with that statement heavily, as the British, their memory of the Great War is still in their mind. We lost 722,000 good men in the Great War and 1,676,000 wounded. There is no way in hell or in heaven the British would support a war anywhere at this current state. Not only will they not support it, we also are unable to carry it out, as previously mentioned by the Chancellor. The discussion of going to war, or even considering doing anything remotely similar to military action in this conflict, is not only useless, but also risky and impossible.
We must explore all options, though, to make an informed decision.
Secretary of State of War, may I ask a question? So,
Foreign Secretary.
I'm not for conflict. However, as you've mentioned, our military is already stretched over a great empire, which, as I'd like to reiterate, is larger than it ever was during the 19th century.
Yeah.
However, since we are overstretched, would it not be difficult to handle the matter effectively in Abyssinia?
Foreign Secretary, I am very glad you asked, because as I did mention before, we are stretched. But I have asked my adjutants to write a report for me on how best to handle the situation. And it states, it is important to state that Britain at the moment is the most influential power on the seas. It is also a great empire.
Yeah.
But all that comes at a cost. We must proceed with utmost caution if we wish to both show our strength and remain protected in other areas, which is exactly what you just mentioned. Royal Navy currently has 3 main fleets: the Atlantic Fleet, the Home Fleet, and the Mediterranean Fleet. We have 2 cruiser squadrons stated near America, 1 in West Indies. In addition to that, the seas next to China are being patrolled by light cruiser squadron, 1 destroyer flotilla, and 1 submarine flotilla. So you can see that any colony we could possibly have is protected by at least 1 squadron, which is at least 6 giant ships. We have also submarine squadron next to Australia and a destroyer squadron next to New Zealand, which will protect them in case Japanese have any colonial ideas, and that gives us the loyalty of both Australia and New Zealand. Back to the report. The Admiralty believes that it would be the smartest to move the 2nd, the 5th, and the 6th destroyer flotilla. Out of some ships from the 2nd and 5th, we would create the 20th destroyer flotilla, and that will be our main task force. Now, out of the remains of the 5th and the 6th, we would create the 90th flotilla, which would be our reserves. That means that we have a task force in place, and we also are able to support them in case things do indeed go south. Thank you.
Is this task force on foot?
This task force is not on foot because we have to agree to that. That is what our governor wants to do, because that will increase tensions, yes, and could potentially lead to a conflict, which I do believe that has to come, because we cannot agree to Italians having their own Manchuria right under our noses. I would like you to remember that we have a colony in Sudan and we have a colony in Somaliland. So we have east and west of Ethiopia.
Secretary of State, I do not doubt our naval superiority. However, how will we intervene inland? We will not be able to just simply sit there and do nothing and watch.
I'm also glad you brought that up. So we currently have about 300,000 British troops after the demilitarizing and the removal of conscription. So now it is only voluntary. We have only voluntarily conscription, which is very bad for our military. As I mentioned before, South Africa is willing to support us with right now 75,000, and if it comes to
Secretary of War, you keep mentioning South Africa, but 5,000 people armed with spears cannot defeat 100 armed with guns. Mentioning South Africa's army is utterly useless. And not only that, but bringing a task force to the door of Mussolini's colonies will be clearly an act of aggression that he will not hesitate to maybe retaliate, or next time Hitler wants to expand into Europe, simply sit back and watch.
We do not wish to provoke Mussolini.
Provoking Mussolini
Home
is
Secretary.
idiotic.
Home Secretary.
Yeah.
So, you are saying that we are not allowed to bring a task force to his door.
It is not
though-
a task force. It is just it is protecting the interests of our assets. If we just move them
British
there,
Somalia.
Yes.
if we just move them
And
there,
walking into a
No, I'm not saying that. No,
it's
Home
simply a
Secretary.
stroll to the park.
Home
It is the same thing, sir.
Home Secretary.
He has shown no intention
I'm saying
marching into our territories.
I'm just saying that if we simply just move the ships and station them in our colonies, in our ports, and we just move them there, and we say they are there to patrol due
Prime
to
Minister, the
the
message will be
conflict
clear.
due to the conflict in Palestine. It is only it is only up to Mussolini's interpretation. We, as a matter of
Yes,
fact,
we
are
can
not
also
saying
mention
anything.
the
Prime
fact that
Minister.
you're for fishing, and it will be just as a stupid excuse to bring that fleet over there.
Prime Minister, I must remind you that aggravating Mussolini could lead to a potential conflict with him. And as I mentioned before, we are in serious economic debts. We borrowed at least 1.2 million pounds after the Great War, and we lent out 1.4 million, but due to the uprising in Russia, they're not paying their loans back. So we are currently very far behind.
Chancellor, we are in debt because people don't have a job.
Yes.
People, what happened before the Great War is when people didn't have a job, they could go to the military. The military was always there for them. Now, because it's voluntarily, they have to go through a series of tests so that people cannot go to the military as they wish. We have to go back to conscription so that people see that they have a chance of going there and earning their minimal wage, and they have a place to sleep, they have things to eat, and they have a stable
Secretary
income.
of State of War, we are in a time of peace here. We aren't looking to expand our armies. We are trying to create peace, not conflict. We've already had our Great War, as you stated, a war to end all wars.
So we must say that if we look at Manchuria, Hitler and Mussolini, and even the Soviets, we are clearly not in a state of peace. But we must now, as the British Cabinet, make a decision. And having listened to all your points and challenged all of you, as it is my job to do so,
Prime Minister,
I've made my decision, Home Secretary, and yes, I do like my job, is the answer to your question. So, here's what our stance will be. We will move the ships off the coast, but we will make a clear statement that they are there to move our troops from the colonies to Palestine in the event of further uprisings. We will not mention anything to do with Mussolini. We will also send a telegraph to the South Africans to say, if we need them, they should be on call. However, we will not intervene with Mussolini, but as soon as there is an inch of his look on any of our colonies, we will send the telegram to the South Africans, to our navy, and we will act accordingly. We will leave Mussolini to do his thing, but as soon as he expands, as soon as he even thinks to expand into us, we will take the appropriate action. And that, ministers, is the stance of this cabinet. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your points.